Welcome to Soulful Insights. I'm your host, Tandy. Today, we're going to be diving into how and why women must reclaim their spiritual power and sovereignty after living in systems that sought to silence them. We're going to explore how women from high-demand religious backgrounds, where their voices were suppressed, have risen into spiritual sovereignty. We're also going to talk about women who have grown up in a masculine-driven society. So this is outside of a religious construct where women's worth is tied to beauty standards or how well they can exhibit masculine traits in order to be considered an equal in the workplace. This episode is about stepping out of the ashes of external control and into the fire of self-sovereignty, where the divine feminine leads us to understand our true worth and power. Many women have been conditioned to believe that their worth is defined by either their submission to patriarchal religious structures or their ability to climb the societal ladder of success. For some, this has meant living under the authority of their husbands and pastors, being told their only connection to God comes through the male figures in their lives. For others, it's the relentless pursuit of external validation, degrees, promotions, beauty standards, without ever recognizing the immense divine power within. Today, I want to talk about how women break free, embrace their divine selves, and realize that they are their own spiritual authority, and their worth and value is not tied to any external source. So, as you know, as we get into this, my experience is from coming from high demand religion, moving into Christianity, and then moving into my spiritual coaching and I am spiritual but not religious. Because that is my background, I am always going to speak to women from high demand religions. That doesn't mean that the message is not for all women, because I am going to speak for both sides, but just realize that we are always going to have some elements of high demand religion's effect on women in the podcast. That's my experience. That's what I know. And it's really, really, really important to me to reach out to those women and to give them a voice and to give them an opportunity to see that it doesn't have to be that way. So we are going to be talking about both women coming from high demand religions and then women just in the general workforce in general society as well. So we're starting with high demand religions, but if this is not your experience, don't worry. This is not all we're going to talk about. We're going to move into other elements as well. But we're going to start with women from high demand religions, and then move into the more secular aspects of this imbalance of the masculine and feminine in society as a whole. So for many women, particularly those raised in strict religious communities, their voices are silenced before they even understand what it means to speak. I know firsthand the burden of being told that your spiritual worth is dependent upon your submission to male authority. In these environments, women are often taught that they must obey their husbands and pastors, and the husband and the pastor are intermediaries between the woman and God. And I was taught this 100%. I was in the office of a stake president who would be considered like higher than a pastor, okay, of a church. He is over many congregations. And he literally told me in an interview before I got married that I had never had a direct connection to God on my own. But now that I was getting married, I was, quote, lucky that I could now have a connection to God through my husband. These are the messages that women are sent, and not only in the religion that I was in, but in high demand Christian religions across the world. The sad reality is also God is portrayed as male. And this perpetuates the subconscious idea that men are prioritized over women. And it gives men an idea of saying, hey, God is male, I'm male, I look more like God, therefore I have power over you. The narrative of Adam and Eve deepens these patriarchal beliefs, as Eve is considered easily deceived. She's the one who caused original sin that damned all of humanity forever, which I find really interesting, that one woman eating a fruit damned all of humanity. I realize God told her not to, but it just seems like a little harsh of a punishment for such a thing. So when you create a religion around the premise that deity can only be male and the fundamental nature of woman is flawed, easily deceived, and morally weak, you have ripe conditions for abuse, oppression, and an overall distrust of women. Or, in other words, you have all the ingredients for misogyny. As a primal example of the oppression of women in Christianity, in 1984, as fundamentalists gained greater control within the Christian religions, the Southern Baptist Convention passed a resolution against the ordination of women. What was the reason given for the refusal to allow women to be ordained? To, quote, preserve a submission God requires because the man was first in creation and the woman was first in the Edenic fall, end quote. So essentially they are using this. The man was created first and the woman was the idiot that ate the fruit and made us all fall. So we need to preserve this submission of women, is essentially what they're saying. This is your prime example of how all women are blamed for a supposed act committed by a woman thousands and thousands of years ago. And now all women, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, are still being blamed for a woman that ate fruit. This story is used to subjugate women and uphold the authority of men. Because Eve was the first to eat the fruit that led to the humans' expulsion from Eden, they argue God compels all women to submit to men. If that's not bad enough, the resolution argued for the preservation of what evangelical Christians claim is, quote, God's delegated order of authority. God the head of Christ, Christ the head of man, man the head of woman, end quote. This is what, for those of you, my listeners who are not from religious backgrounds, this is the fundamental premise of how they see women. They are like bottom of the barrel. And they won't tell you this. Oh no, women are equal in the eyes of God. And they will say this, but the reality is it is not how they behave. It is not how they act. If women are equal in the eyes of God, they can be pastors, they can be elders, they can be all these things. No, women are not allowed to have a voice in the church. They are not equal. Many Christians try to soften their theology over the pulpit and call it, quote, benevolent patriarchy. That's a new thing, which is extremely dangerous. But we're not going to get into that today. They claim that even though the man is the head of the woman and she must submit to him, the man should be nice. He should be nice to her. The issue with this is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We know that power corrupts every time. And you cannot say that we are giving men universal authority over women and that's not going to end in an abuse of power. You cannot say that. It cannot happen. It will not happen. We do not live in a world where that can work. You cannot claim power and authority over another human being and yet claim that it is not a problem as long as you treat them nice. And this is the same argument they used to use for slavery as well. Oh, slavery is fine. Just be nice. Yeah, well, how well did that work out? It didn't. You know, it's the subjugation of human beings that they see as less than them. Not all pastors hide the misogyny of Christianity, however, and there are a lot of them across the entire United States. I don't know about other countries. You can let me know. But across the United States, there are toxic pastors everywhere. So J.D. Vance, who is a pastor of Dallas, a Dallas megachurch, Lake Point, made headlines when he told women to crown their abusive husbands as kings in order to get them to act respectably. He told women to stand where he tells you to stand, wear what he tells you to wear, and do what he tells you to do on his wedding night. I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. In Dallas, this is what is being told to women. Women need to rise from these ashes. If you don't think this is the standard of all Christianity, let me remind you, if you've not already heard my earlier podcast, I went through ministry school and became a pastor. I went through these classes. The professor of my pastoral counseling class is a nationally known PhD in theology and religion. Okay? When he speaks across the United States. Okay? His name, he's all over the internet. Articles, interviews, and everything of him are all over the internet. So this is not just some random guy out of the woodwork. When he was teaching us about pastoral marriage counseling, he brought up a common question from students about biblical marriage and divorce. He said that students often ask how to counsel a woman who's been the victim of domestic violence. Now remember, J.D. Vance, what did he say? Women are told to crown their abusive husbands as kings. And that's how you're going to get him to act respectfully towards you. Okay? So we have an example of a quote right here of a pastor speaking in this exact way. But I'm going to give you my experience. So the pastor says, my professor says, God hates divorce. It is plainly written in the Bible. If the woman is in enough physical danger to need medical attention, she can separate from her husband, but in no way should she be advised to get a divorce. She can wait for him to repent and get right with the Lord, and if he cannot, she can live separated for the rest of her life. Alone, separated, but not allowed to get a divorce. If she is not in not in enough physical danger, she should first try to submit better to him. This is what professors in Christian colleges are teaching students about domestic violence today. You say, oh, maybe you went, in the 90s, or maybe you're just really old. No. This was only several years ago that this was said. In the 2020s. Yeah, this is what they are still teaching. I'm going to give you another example. Pastor Andy Savage resigned from his position at High Point Church after an investigation into his sexual assault of a teenage girl. He confessed before the church of having sex with a teenage girl. Now, what he doesn't say in his confession is that this was forced. This was an assault. This was not in any way a mutual thing. And what happened? He received a standing ovation. Here we see a victim being completely ignored while her abuser is being applauded for, quote, repenting. What did he do to repent? He tells the church that he had a sexual incident with a teenage girl. He does not make it clear that this was forced. This type of behavior you will see over and over and over again in Christian churches, and it will not stop until women are restored to their rightful place as full and complete equals. If you want more information about sexual abuse scandals in the Christian church, I would highly recommend that you watch the documentary For Our Daughters. It's free on YouTube. It's about 30 minutes. It will give you a fantastic look into the abuse that goes on and how it is covered up. This happens in the Mormon church. We have a lot of evidence of that. If you guys are interested in hearing more about this, maybe a podcast about it, I'd be happy to do it. Just contact me on my social media, direct message me, whatever. Let me know that you're interested in that. So let's move into how the Christian church is actually a breeding ground for domestic violence and abuse. So I want to first define what a healthy relationship looks like when both the masculine and feminine are honored as full and complete equals. Most Christian churches have never taught the difference between how a healthy relationship operates and how an unhealthy relationship operates. And if you're wondering how this all relates to rising from the ashes, I am setting the stage to help you see how women are being held down in the ashes. They are being Their voices are being suppressed. They are being trapped in abusive marriages. And the Christian church is fostering this. They are telling women that the only thing that they should be doing is being in the home and taking care of a husband and a family. She has no financial ability to get out if she's in an abusive situation. A lot of times people say, why would she stay? She might not have another option. Where does she get the money to leave? How does she get an apartment? How does she get anything? There are so many ways where women are being so oppressed, and a lot of people don't see this. This is just something that I have seen in so many places because of the work that I do. That this is why I am saying we need women to rise up from these ashes, to see their worth, to see that their voices matter, and start demanding better. And the reason that I started with women in high demand religions is because they are the most oppressed of them all, in most cases. So, most Christian women are never taught what a truly healthy relationship looks like. In fact, most Christian women, what they are taught in church about a relationship is actually an abusive one. And so when they get into an abusive relationship, they don't even recognize it. And the simple answer to why a relationship is healthy or not is simply found in balance of power. So in a healthy relationship, we're going to see an equitable distribution of power. Both partners are considered completely equal. Okay? Both parties have freedom of choice, freedom of speech, and freedom of movement. And you might say, well, duh. Well, I personally know a couple where the woman, he actually looks at the odometer every day so that he knows how far she has driven. He tracks everything. Okay? So when you say that's weird, I say, no, I know women. I personally know several women whose movement is severely restricted. Both parties have equal decision-making power. This is something that the Christian church teaches should not happen. The male has priority in decision-making in a Christian theology. One spouse does not dictate to or have authority over the other. This is really important for a healthy relationship. Decision-making is always done fairly with consideration of both parties. This is not taught. Now, I received a magazine called Above Rubies, and I'm going to call this out because it was so horrible. There was a story told about a woman who's 3 months pregnant, and she is still absolutely in the throes of nausea and throwing up and not feeling well at all. And her husband wanted to live in a KOA campground in a tent to save money to buy a house. They were living in an apartment at the time. Now, he has the one car that they have. This is their first child, by the way, that she's pregnant with. They have one car that he goes to work every day. So, and she stays home. She's staying home even though they don't even have kids yet. And so this woman is going to be sitting in a tent all day, every day alone, sicker than a dog, without running water or a toilet. And this husband wants to save money and basically pulls the "you have to submit to me" card. And in this magazine, they were applauding this woman for submitting to her husband and living in a tent. And just in case you were wondering, this happened in the mid-2000s. So this is not some old story. This is what is happening in the Christian church, and people are not talking about it. And that is why I am talking about it, because women need to rise above the ashes. They need to have spiritual sovereignty. They need to have individual sovereignty. Okay? So decision-making in a Christian biblical marriage is never done fairly. The husband has the trump card every time. And they'll be like, no, he's supposed to take her into consideration. The problem is he's supposed to take her into consideration, but she does not have equal decision-making power. That's the thing that they don't flat out admit because it sounds terrible, and it is. The thoughts, feelings, and needs of each partner are always considered equally. Again, this is not the case. They say he should take you into consideration, but the reality is he has the ultimate power and authority, so he can choose either way. Domestic labor is shared equally. This is critical. This is critical. And I'd be like, well, the man provides and she takes care of the house and whatever. I'm like, the man would go to work every day whether he was married or not. That is not contributing. He's not contributing anything that he wouldn't be doing otherwise. Why should I just all of a sudden say, oh, he was an engineer when I met him and he went to work every day. He had to go to work and he had to clean his apartment. He had to do his dishes. He had to do all of that because it's just basic life skills. And now that we're married, he still goes to work and does all the same things. But now I'm expected to clean up after him like his mommy. No, this is a shared thing. Okay. And you can arrange that however you want. But putting it squarely on the shoulders of another person, no. As both partners are equally parents, you're both involved in that situation, they both decide how to divide up the child care so both partners can be equally fulfilled in life while both are involved in the rearing of their children. This is a healthy relationship. Sometimes I know men who are stay-at-home dads. Great. If that's the decision that the two of you have made, great. If each of you kind of, take different turns, there's a grandma or an aunt or someone else who's watching the children at times. However you want to work that out is great, but it needs to be within an individual marriage for what each individual wants and is suitable for them. It should not be something that's dictated from the outside. Again, individual sovereignty. We need to have sovereignty to live our lives the way that we want to and not be dictated from the outside. Conversation is gentle. Neither party ever overrides the other. It is very common in a Christian marriage to have the man believe that he should get the last say. And he can become very domineering because he is told that that's his role. Both spouses should have an equal input into how the relationship develops. And this means, who wants to go to school where and when they have children and how intimacy is and how they interact with friends and all of that. And if one partner is not comfortable with certain friends or not comfortable with things that are going on, there needs to be respect for the feelings of that other person. So that's kind of what that means. And then both spouses have equal input about intimacy in the relationship. Now, I want you to understand, in Christianity, the way that they set up intimacy in marriage is really interesting because there is a passage in the Bible that talks about the woman's body being the husband's. It is not hers, it is her husband's. Then in the next passage, it says the husband's is not his body, it's his wife's. And there's kind of this thing here. Problem is, they sort of ignore the second part of that and basically say because the wife's body is the husband's, that he should have unfettered access to sex whenever he wants. And there are fundamentalist churches within Christianity that will literally say whether she's pregnant, whether she's sick, no matter what, she has to submit joyfully to this. Excuse me. That is what they believe. Okay. And there are women who have literally been in labor in a hospital and their husband forced them to have sex while they were in labor. True story. So this is what is happening. And the problem is, if you're not careful with your religious stuff, you can allow an abuser to use religion against their wife. And that's where we have a problem. So let's now look at how Christian churches are a hunting ground for narcissists and abusers. And I want to first point out that domestic abusers have admitted during interviews and different things that churches are the best place to find gullible, timid, and complacent wives. Abusers know that all they have to do is fake an interest in religion, say the right things, and get involved in a church to find submissive women who will not resist their abuse or leave them due to her religious convictions. This is why churches are a breeding ground for abuse. And if you get tired of me talking about this and all the spirituality, it's because we need to get women to see what is happening. We need to get women to wake up. Before we can have spiritual sovereignty, before we can rise spiritually as women and learn about the divinity within us, we have to break women free of oppressive religious belief systems that are literally designed to keep them small and disconnect them from God. Women in religions are disconnected from the divine. They are disconnected from themselves. They are disconnected from the divine within. Because everything outside of the church that's spiritual is considered evil. We cannot rise as women in society if we don't know about this. And yes, this is important for those of you that are not religious and don't go to church. You need to know what's going on in the churches. You need to be a support to the women who are there. We need to band together. Be a support to them. Help them. Help them see what it is to be a normal and healthy, functioning woman with sovereignty over her own life. This is how we rise. This is how we rise. So, women are taught in Christian churches to be submissive to male authority, that women are easily deceived by Satan and therefore cannot be a spiritual authority in their home or in a church. They are not allowed to teach males over the age of 11 in most churches. They are taught to value strong male leadership, or they call it headship. Now they call it servant leaders. Men are servant leaders in the home. Oh my gosh. They're trying to make it sound better. They use the word servant to make it so that he's not like, wielding power over her when that's really what's happening. But the word servant, they try to soften that. It's really ridiculous because that's just not how men behave 90% of the time. They are taught that their primary role in life is to serve their husband and their children. So a woman generally lives a life of servitude if she follows this. Now, a lot of women work outside the home now, but usually the women that are working outside the home are still doing everything. They are doing all of the housework, all of the childcare after work, all the making the meals, all the everything. So basically now when a woman may have been a stay-at-home mom before, now she's having to work and do everything else. They're basically single moms with an extra income from a man. That's literally what they are, most of them. Because the men are taught that housework is a woman's work, and a lot of them are unwilling to do it. She is taught that having her own opinions, dreams, or aspirations in life is selfish. It's of the devil. If you want to get an education, if you want to become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a rocket scientist, a researcher, whatever it is, that is selfish of you. Now, it's fine if the man does that, but if there is something that you want to do in your life, that's selfish. You are supposed to desire to live a life of servitude. The entire weight of the household responsibility and childcare rests on her shoulders. She is also taught that the only reason that she should get a divorce is infidelity. Severe physical abuse does not make the list as a reason. So if she's getting broken arms, black eyes, she's ending up in an emergency room, not a reason to get a divorce according to biblical womanhood and biblical marriage in most Christian churches. Now, you're going to have nuances and stuff like that. You're also going to have a lot of Christians who say, not mine, not mine. The problem is you don't hear about this over the pulpit in a lot of ways. But if you go in for pastoral counseling, a lot of times they will advise you to just get separated. 9 times out of 10, that's probably what you're going to hear because it's what they're taught in school. So let's look at the dynamics of an unhealthy relationship and how it completely aligns with Christian doctrine of biblical marriage. Imbalanced distribution of power. The man is the spiritual authority and she must submit to him and whatever decisions he ultimately makes. Now, some men will allow her to contribute to the decisions, but if they disagree, it always defaults to his idea. And that is doctrinal. So if a husband and a wife are disagreeing about buying a car, buying a house, anything, even those massive life-changing things, if they are disagreeing, it defaults to him. The final say, like I said, is made by the husband. Her thoughts, feelings, and ideas do not hold as much value as his because he is the authority in the home. Domestic labor falls completely on her shoulders. The entirety of child raising falls completely on her shoulders. Intimacy in the relationship is generally dictated by the husband, as most churches state the wife's body belongs to the husband. But they kind of miss that second part, as we talked before. I also want to make you aware that there is an Instagram account right now that has become aware of pastors calling in young girls into his office, their offices, many pastors, and were forcing teenage girls to be weighed to make sure that they would be attractive to a future husband. And apparently this is something that was happening very commonly. I don't know if it still is, but it was common in the 90s and common in the early 2000s. This was happening. So you can see when I talk about women being in the ashes, women being in the trenches, we have to understand where these women are before we can rise together. We have to look at where other women are, because these women somehow have to see where they are in order to get out. A lot of these women believe that this is all dictated by God. And if it's dictated by God, you can't question it. And we've got to help them see that we have to rise above this. So as you can see, Christian teachings fall right in line with abusive relationship dynamics, where one partner is prioritized over the other. All domestic labor and childcare falls only on one partner. This can lead to burnout in women. And I can tell you, in my marriage, even though I was in a high demand religion, my husband did not treat me this way, but I was a stay-at-home mom. I was a homeschooling mom. I did all of these things. And by the time my kids were older and moving out, I was absolutely burned out. It was like I almost could not even think of what to make for dinner anymore. But as women wake up to their power and begin to rise, they begin to understand that their connection to the divine has always been direct and without the need for an intermediary. We need to help wake women up. Women will come to realize that their very essence is reflected in the true nature of God, the divine feminine. These women coming from backgrounds where the divine feminine was erased have fought to reclaim their voices. Some of us have woken up, and we need to try to wake up the rest. These women are asleep. They are unaware of what they are in the middle of. And a lot of times when we're in the middle of things, we don't realize how bad it is till we get out. And those of us that are out know. But when women see their value and their worth, they no longer accept that their spiritual worth is dependent on their husbands or the men in religious power. They learn to embody spiritual sovereignty, realizing that their higher self was always there, waiting to be awakened. Your soul, the divine part of you, waiting to be awakened. These are women who've walked away from the limitations placed on them by their churches, stepping out of oppressive marriages, and found that their spiritual path is guided not by external rules, but by the intuitive wisdom of their soul. For women outside of strict religious environments, the story may look different, but the pressures are just as intense. In a world that glorifies material success, academic achievements, and physical beauty, women often find themselves climbing a corporate ladder that leads to burnout, constantly chasing degrees and promotions in an effort to be seen as equal. The masculine-driven world teaches women to measure their value in accomplishments, body image, and societal standards. If we look at women in the corporate world or in the workforce, we find that there are several dynamics at play. A woman who is seen as beautiful according to societal standards is generally not taken seriously by the men she works with, as men see these women as objects to serve their visual pleasure, and they struggle to see them as an intelligent equal. This is not for all men, okay? But I'm just saying that this, in a patriarchal, masculine-driven world, it is very common to fall into this habit, especially in a world where we have sexualized, plasticized bodies strewn all over the internet, and it really messes with the way that they're able to see women. I'm sorry, it just does. We find in the workplace that the more a woman conforms to masculine traits, the more she's respected by her male colleagues. And that might be hard for you to believe, but I'm going to tell you a study. There was research coming out of Stanford Graduate School of Business that showed that women who exhibited more like traditionally masculine traits, being assertive, confident, competitive, had more success in the workplace, especially in terms of getting promotions and salary increases. So if you act more like a man and you seem more male, masculine, you are going to do better at work than if you are more feminine. This should not be happening. This study from Stanford University found that women who score higher in masculine traits tend to achieve greater career success. It's not only found in religion. The prioritization of masculine traits is found in corporate America as well. Regardless of how advanced or progressive we believe we are as a society, we live in a systemically patriarchal culture that prioritizes masculine qualities and views women for the value in serving men rather than honoring their dignity as equals. And that's just the way that things are going. We're seeing research out of Stanford. These are just in corporate America. This is not in, the Bible Belt in the South where we're seeing oppression of women religiously. This is in corporate America that they're prioritizing masculine traits. Women in the workplace may reach a breaking point where they realize that no amount of external success or perfection will fill the void within. It's here in this awakening that they begin to encounter the divine feminine. They realize their worth is infinite, that their value does not rest in their resumes or their appearance. Now, I'm not saying in any way that you should not pursue every dream you have. You want to go be a rocket scientist, you go be a rocket scientist. But what I'm saying is, when we connect with the feminine within us, you realize that your worth is infinite. Your value is not in your resume. It's also not in your appearance. Stop living for the approval of others. Start living from a place of internal power, guided by your higher self. Then you find that the divine feminine has been with you all along, calling you to step into your true essence. Women in patriarchal cultures also are viewed as sex objects to be consumed. And a lot of people don't like this and are uncomfortable with it, but I shoot straight. We move into a culture that is constantly critiquing the physical appearance of women. And you know what? Women do it. I was a Pilates teacher for years, and I had a woman in her mid-50s. She had a daughter who was on a water polo team. And she talked about how all the water polo girls would pull their swimming suits, basically giving themselves a wedgie with their swimming suits. I have no idea. And she's like, you just see these 16-year-old girls walking around, these little 16-year-old girls' butts hanging out everywhere. But here's the thing that this woman said. There was a girl on her daughter's water polo team who was larger than the others. And she made the comment that this young girl who was larger than the others also pulled her swimming suit up like that. And she said, nobody wants to see that, honey. Nobody wants to see that. And I took pause, and I really honestly did not know how to respond to that, because that is absolutely body shaming. These are 16-year-old girls. Essentially what this 55-year-old woman is saying is, if a 16-year-old girl's body is sexy enough and fits within beauty standards, that they are allowed to do this. But if you don't, that's gross and you should not do it. I hope you can see the issue with this. And I'm not going to say what's right and what's wrong, but I will absolutely say either everybody should do it or nobody should do it, but we should not be body shaming people who don't fit some standard that we have set for them. We have no idea. This girl could have been taller, bigger boned. I don't know, but regardless, it doesn't matter. It's either okay for everyone from the time they're 2 to the time they're 100, or it's not okay for anyone. Another quote that I used to get, both men and women say this: yoga pants don't lie. What the hell does that mean? Yoga pants don't lie about what? Essentially, the premise of this quote is that women's bodies must fit some ideal of perfection, and if they do not, their yoga pants will expose their imperfection. This is a horrible attitude, but very common in society. How often do you hear someone say about men, your slacks don't lie? We don't talk about men this way. We don't. But we talk about women's bodies this way because we expect women's bodies to conform. We don't expect men's bodies to conform at all. If we want to rise as women, we have to stop doing this to each other. If you don't like a patriarchal culture, if you want to rise spiritually, you cannot talk about other women this way. This is not how we rise spiritually together. When we are picking apart each other's bodies, when we are saying it's okay for this size person and this age person because I think they're sexy so they can expose whatever they want, but if you're 80 years old, don't you dare do it. If your body is bigger than I expect it to be, don't you do it. We have to stop doing this to each other. This is not how we rise above this patriarchal oppression that women are in, and we are still in it. Everyone's like, oh, we're so progressive and women are equal. No, you're not. Just because you can go to medical school, just because you can become a marriage and family therapist, just because you can get these advanced degrees, does not mean that you are seen the same. Does not mean that you are afforded the same honor and dignity that a man would give another man, because you're not. Very rarely is a man in our society able to see a woman that way. Sorry. Another issue that I saw as a Pilates instructor, and this just drives home the same point, but young women in their 20s would come in their booty shorts and sports bras to class all the time. And this was completely acceptable. No one thought a thing about it. However, I had a woman who was 56 years old who showed up to class wearing the exact same thing that the 20-year-olds were wearing. And I would get, when people would hear, like, I made a comment about how it was 20 degrees outside, and this 56-year-old woman came in booty shorts and a sports bra. And I wasn't talking anything about her outfit other than it was 20 degrees outside. She had no coat, no nothing. She came in she just came like that, and we were all freezing. And I was just kind of joking of like, this woman is like a beast. Like, she is just warm in herself, you know? So I had made this comment, really just kind of pointing out how she was just like, you know, on fire or whatever. And the 20-year-olds in class were like, ew, who wants to see a 55-year-old in booty shorts? That's disgusting. And everyone was making these comments, and it took me by surprise. These are all women in this class. But again, body shaming is real. So we're basically saying, if you're a 20-something and your body fits a societal standard, go ahead and wear the booty shorts and the sports bra. But if you're 55, you are not allowed to. And here's the thing. This 55-year-old was fitter than any of these 20-year-olds. And I know that this doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter if she was a size 2 or a size 100 or anywhere in between. It doesn't matter. But the fact is, just in their brain, hearing a 55-year-old was wearing that kind of an outfit, it's an automatic, ew, nobody wants to see that. I am hearing these things. I'm like, dude, this woman is fitter and leaner than all of you in here. But it's this idea, oh, if you're old, you don't get to wear what I wear because you don't fit. You have to be 20 to 35 in order to wear clothes that expose your body. And if you're not 20 to 35, ew, nobody wants to see that. Oh, if your body's bigger, ew, nobody wants to see that. How do women rise spiritually when this is how we treat each other? 20 and 30-year-olds are trying to buck tradition, wearing more revealing clothing and claiming that religion body shamed them by telling them to cover up. But They will turn around and body shame a woman who is curvier or heavier than they are, or women who are older than they are. Explain to me how telling you to wear longer shorts is body shaming, but it's not body shaming when you say, I can wear a thong bikini, but a 60-year-old, ew, that's gross. Essentially, you're saying if you're sexy, you're allowed, but if you're not, you're not. It's not okay. It's either okay for every single person from age 2 to 100, or it shouldn't be okay for anyone. But picking and choosing what women we think are acceptable enough to show anything, this is where we are running into body shaming. You are still 100% having a patriarchal attitude. And they think that they're sticking up a middle finger to the patriarchy by wearing more revealing clothing. Honey, you're not. You're not. You're giving into it. You're giving into the idea that if you look sexy in something, you should wear it. But if you don't, you can't. 100% patriarchy. Sorry. Doesn't work. Women are falling into patriarchal conditioning and yet believing that somehow these sexist ideals are feminism at its finest. They think that this is feminist. You're shaming a woman that's bigger than you, telling her she can't wear what you wear because she's bigger than you, and that's feminism? You're running around practically wearing nothing, and then you say if a 65-year-old woman does the same thing, that's gross, ew, nobody wants to see that? That's patriarchy, honey. That's patriarchy at its finest. You have not bucked the system at all. You are body shaming anybody that does not fit a certain standard. I'm not going to go into all the ways that patriarchal culture has infiltrated modern feminism, but unfortunately it has infiltrated much of it. The complete and total equality of women is absolutely necessary, but honoring the dignity and infinite value of what it is to be feminine must be preserved. What happens when women start recognizing their power? Not through external validation, but through their connection to the divine feminine. They transcend the limitations of society and religion. In ancient cultures, the divine feminine was worshipped alongside the masculine, creating balance and harmony. Women embody this balance. When they embrace the feminine within themselves, the feminine divine within themselves, they no longer feel the need to seek for approval from patriarchal society or religious systems. While embracing the honor and dignity of the feminine, of womanhood, we must not neglect the most miraculous power that exists in our physical world, the ability to create life. Literally. Another thing that I did, I worked as a midwife for years. I worked with midwives for years. So I know the absolute miracle of honoring a woman's ability to create life. If your honoring of the feminine does not honor this miraculous power, you have failed to embody true honor and respect of the feminine, and your ideals still fall within the patriarchy. When women walk in sovereignty, trusting their intuition, knowing that they are enough simply because they exist, this recognition leads to a deep spiritual rebirth. These women realize that their power comes from within, and that they no longer need to strive for worthiness in the eyes of others. They embrace their role as powerful, intuitive beings who can lead, nurture, and create without asking permission. So how do we rise from the ashes and step into our power? Here are some practical steps. Reflect on the beliefs that have been instilled in you, whether through religion or society's expectations. Ask yourself where you've been giving your power away. Religious conditioning can run very deep in your default programming, and it can be difficult to unravel. Women often claim that they are equals before God, and yet they believe a woman should support her husband. But if you ask a husband if he should support his wife in her hopes and dreams, he's going to get uncomfortable because he does not believe that. Many women who are trying to break free from purity culture still hold the view that if your body's attractive by society standards, you can show your stomach or you can show your butt in swimwear. But if you do not fit the societal age or standard, you should not wear this clothing or swimwear. They are completely unaware that this body shaming is patriarchal. Many women have never even stopped to consider where these beliefs came from and whether these beliefs that they hold are really honoring the dignity of all people. Because I will tell you they're not. Women still struggle believing a woman can hold a high leadership position in a job because she's been religiously conditioned that it is against God's will. It takes a lot of self-awareness and reflection to really dig deep and find where you are carrying patriarchal ideology. And you might be quite surprised that some of the things you thought were feminist are actually born of chauvinism and patriarchy. I'm not going to go into that today. But in the future, I may talk about how patriarchy has infiltrated the anti-purity culture movement and feminism in ways that are harmful to women. They disconnect women from their essence, from honoring the feminine, and it has been notoriously destructive. We can honor the masculine aspects of women with feminism, but we do not honor the feminine side. And yet we call ourselves feminists. I'm sorry, that is not what it is about. We are chauvinists. We are supporting the masculine in women. We are not supporting the feminine in women. I don't know how else to slice this. Meditation and breath work. I know I say this all the time, but it is so crucial to spiritual health. Begin a daily practice of connecting to your higher self, connecting to your spirit guides, connecting to divine source. Use breath work to release trauma and default programming and conditioning, and to awaken the heart center where your true wisdom lies. Your higher self can guide you to the places in your conditioning where you are holding imbalanced beliefs. It can be difficult for all of us to recognize the toxic patterns and beliefs, even when we are striving to be self-aware. But during meditation, you can be shown things that you were completely unaware of. And it can be a powerful catalyst for change in your life that is unmatched by anything else. And I love this one. You need to reclaim your story. Journal about times when you felt disempowered. Disempowered by religion, society, school, work, in relationships. Take those moments of disempowerment and write a new narrative for yourself. Maybe someone said something to you that you believed that wasn't true. Rewrite that into a story in which you are the sovereign authority over your own life. Rewrite the religious conditioning where you were taught to abandon yourself for the sake of others, and that was the only honorable thing to do. Your worth is tied to patriarchal beauty standards that can only be achieved through generally physical alterations and procedures, exercising to make your body conform to some standard set by male desire. Even maybe down to the time where you've been told that you throw like a girl. Take your power back. Take your sovereignty back. Rewrite these disempowering stories and transform them into stories of empowerment, breaking free from religious oppression or societal standards. Connect with the divine feminine. And this may trigger the religious ones of you, because you've been told that God is male and can only be male, and anything else is heresy and blasphemous. It is time to shed the patriarchal lies. All of creation reflects the masculine and feminine, even the plants. And this reflects the divine creators. Seek and study the ancient wisdom and traditions that honored the divine feminine, whether through Shakti, Shekinah, Isis, the original Holy Spirit. Find a goddess or divine archetype that resonates with your soul. These goddesses are simply archetypes of the divine feminine, but they guide women to see their own divinity, to see themselves represented in deity. You can see women who are powerful in these archetypes even having the power of resurrection and healing. Find empowerment in learning about these powerful archetypes of the divine feminine. Embrace your authentic self. Cease striving for perfection in the eyes of society or others. You're not here to fit into society's standards or religious molds. You are here to be authentically you. You have very unique perspectives, intelligence, spiritual gifts, talents, personality, interests, hobbies. Every part of you is unique. And you have a purpose on this earth that is far beyond the confines of religious gender roles, relationship status being created as an identity, or society's standards of beauty, or even standards of what is acceptable for a woman. Women are powerful beyond measure and intelligent in their own unique way. The world needs women in every facet of society to restore harmony and balance. When the feminine is restored to her rightful place, you will find a society where there is greater safety and peace. Embrace all of who you are and know that your authentic self is absolutely perfect. I encourage you to reflect on your own journey into feminine sovereignty. Where have you given your power away, and where can you begin to reclaim it? Share your reflections on social media using the hashtag #RisingFromTheAshes, and tag us in your posts so that I can walk this path of awakening with you, so that we can walk this path of awakening together. Thank you for joining me on this journey of spiritual rebirth. And remember that you are a divine, powerful being, and your connection to the divine is your birthright. Until next time, stay connected to your higher self. Rise from the ashes into the sovereign soul you are meant to be.